I know Bugatti are watching this, and I am trying to do you guys proud on building a massive team up together to build all these parts up.
So Bugatti looked at this car, and they told the owner something pretty brutal.
On that chassis number of vehicle, they will not supply any component through a Bugatti dealership.
And if you want to repair that properly, you can't do that in a garage. There's just a few places in the world with the right equipment and only a few people in the world with the right training to be able to do that.
We're not touching this, and we're not selling you a single part to fix it. Basically, forget it, this car's dead. And normally, that's it. That's the end. Car gets crushed, insurance pays out, everyone moves on. Except two guys didn't move on. They looked at that same dead car and thought, actually, watch this. And what they did next is the reason Bugatti's PR team has probably had a rough couple of months. Because this isn't some garage guy playing pretend. This is a $3.5 million hypercar, one of only 60 on the entire planet, getting cut in half, welded back together with parts Bugatti refused to sell, and 3D printed with tech that actually got their CEO to respond publicly.
Bugatti aren't going to sell us parts to rebuild this car, and they're not going to help us separate the car in half.
Over a YouTube build. So stick around, because this gets messier, weirder, and a lot more personal than you'd expect by the end. Okay, let's actually rewind, because I don't want to just throw you into the middle of this. You need the full picture first. So the car we're talking about is a Bugatti Chiron Pur Sport, owned by a guy named Gonzalez. Pretty big name if you're into this side of YouTube. And I want to actually pause on how rare this car is, because I don't think it hits people right away. Bugatti only built 60 of these. 60. Worldwide. We're talking north of $3.5 million before you even touch the options list. This isn't a car you see parked outside a coffee shop. This is a car that shows up on some billionaire's garage inventory next to 4 or 5 others, and that's basically it for the whole planet. And then it got wrecked. Not a scrape, not a curb rash. A real accident, serious enough that Bugatti themselves came out to actually look at it. And you'd think, okay, it's their car, they'll fix it. That's kind of the whole point of buying a hypercar from a manufacturer like this, right? Nope. They inspected it and basically said, we're done here. Wouldn't repair it. Wouldn't even sell the parts to repair it. As far as Bugatti was concerned, that Chiron was dead, conversation closed, don't call us again. And for most owners, that probably is the end. You take the payout. You post a sad photo. The car gets quietly potted out somewhere in Europe. Life goes on. Except Alex didn't want that ending. So he made one phone call. And that phone call is basically the whole reason this story exists. He called Matt Armstrong. Quick rundown if you don't know him. Matt's built his entire channel around taking cars everyone else has given up on and somehow getting them running again. Wrecked Lambos. Trashed Rolls Royces. Stuff insurance companies write off completely, is brought back over and over. So on paper, if anyone was going to look at a dead Chiron and think, yeah, I can actually do this, it was him. But even as admitted, looking at this one for the first time, there was a real moment of doubt. Because this wasn't just structural damage. This was Bugatti actively refusing to be involved at all. No parts, no support. No blessing from literally the only company on earth that makes these components. If this car was coming back, it was coming back with zero help from Bugatti. None. And that's a completely different kind of problem than the car's broken. That's the car's broken, and the only people who can actually fix it properly have already said no. So let's talk about what that actually looked like, because this is where people's jaws started dropping. To even get to the damage, they had to physically split the car in half. Front structure separated from the rear, just to reach the gearbox and engine mounting that got wrecked. There's no Bugatti manual for that. There's no official how to split your Chiron in half guide. They were figuring this out step by step, live, on camera, with half the comment section convinced this thing was never running again. And there's this one part that honestly deserves its own moment, because it sums up how deep this whole thing went. There's a gearbox mount in this car that's actually designed, on purpose, to break in a crash. It's a sacrificial piece, meant to redirect force and protect the rest of the structure. Smart engineering, sure, but it also means it was never really meant to be repaired afterward. It's meant to be thrown away and replaced. So a new one from Bugatti? Astronomically expensive, assuming they'd even sell it, which, again, they wouldn't. So a specialist welder ended up TIG welding the broken mount back together by hand. And from what people in the industry have said, that's just not something you're supposed to be able to do. It's not built to be weldable in any reliable way. And somehow it held. But honestly, that welded mount wasn't even the part that caused the real drama. The bigger controversy showed up when the team started 3D printing replacement parts to get around Bugatti's refusal to supply anything. And we're not talking little plastic clips here. Some of these were genuinely advanced components. Stuff Bugatti originally built using pretty cutting-edge manufacturing tech in the first place. This is the moment the story stopped being cool rebuild video and became an actual industry controversy. Because word of these homemade parts got back to Bugatti Rimac, and not in a some engineer raise an eyebrow kind of way. It got serious enough that their CEO ended up publicly addressing it. Sit with that for a second. Two independent creators, working out of a normal workshop, got the head of one of the most secretive hypercar companies on the planet to respond publicly to a YouTube build. That doesn't happen. That tells you exactly how seriously this was being taken behind the scenes. Despite all that pushback, they kept going, and slowly, month after month, the car actually started coming back together. Eventually the two halves, front and rear, got reconnected. Engine and gearbox, ripped apart since the crash, went back in as one complete unit for the first time in almost a year. And then came the moment that genuinely could have gone either way. They turned the key, and it started. An engine Bugatti had officially written off, firing up in a garage that had absolutely nothing to do with the factory. If you've ever watched a rebuild video, you know that sound hits different, and by every account, that moment in the shop was exactly that. Relief, disbelief, a little bit of told you so, because plenty of people in the comments had said this thing was never running again. But getting it running wasn't actually the finish line. Once it was mechanically alive, this thing shifted gears into something bigger. Custom exhaust, hand-built specifically for this car, because obviously Bugatti wasn't an option there either. Then the interior honestly might be my favorite part of this whole story. A completely bespoke cabin, built from scratch. This bold purple and white color scheme you will never see on a Chiron that actually rolled out of the real factory. Purple steering wheel, all of it. And from what's been said, even Matt wasn't totally sold when he first saw the design on paper, but once it was actually sitting in the car in person, he came around fast. On top of that, the exterior got reworked with an aggressive wide body kit, completely changing the stance of the car. Wider, meaner, more presence. A look Bugatti's design team had zero input on and almost certainly never signed off on. So by the time this thing was actually done, and we're talking close to 2 years of work here, on and off, dealing with setbacks and part shortages and a manufacturer actively working against them the whole way, this wasn't really a repaired Chiron anymore in any normal sense. It basically evolved into its own thing. A one-of-one hypercar that started as one of 60 official Pur Sports and ended up as something entirely custom, entirely independent, built specifically because the manufacturer said it couldn't be done. There's something kind of poetic about that. Honestly, the car Bugatti wanted to disappear ended up being more talked about and more recognizable online than most of the actual 60 official cars nobody ever touches. And then, right when you'd expect this whole thing to wrap up nice and clean, there's a last twist that caught a lot of people off guard, me included when I first read about it. After everything, the split chassis, the welded mount, the 3D printed parts, the CEO getting involved, 2 years of grinding, Matt actually asked to buy the car. And look, on paper that seems completely fair, right? The guy poured an insane amount of time and reputation into saving this thing. You'd think that request is basically a formality at that point. Alex said no, flat out, kept the car. And that created some real, noticeable tension between the two of them that's honestly still playing out in later videos, because a huge chunk of the audience fully expected this build to end with Matt driving off in it. Instead, viewers got something messier and a lot more real. Two people who'd just been through an insane 2-year ordeal together, disagreeing on what should happen with the result of all that work. I want to zoom out for a second here, because I think it's worth talking about why this actually blew up the way it did, beyond just cool car content. Part of it's a spectacle. Obviously, watching a car get split in half and put back together is fascinating no matter whose badge is on the front. But I think the bigger reason is what it represents. A manufacturer looked at one of their own cars, one of only 60 ever made, and decided it wasn't worth saving. refused to help, refused to sell parts, basically tried to close the door and move on. And two independent guys with zero factory backing did it anyway. Welded what wasn't supposed to be weldable, printed what Bugatti refused to supply, and ended up with something that, in a lot of ways, is more personal and more unique than anything that ever left the actual factory floor. That's really the core of why this rattled people, and probably rattled Bugatti too, even if they never said it outright. It's not really about the car getting fixed. It's about proving, on camera, in front of millions of people, that a manufacturer doesn't have as much control over their own cars once they leave a building as everyone assumes. It's also worth saying, this wasn't universally loved. Plenty of people, including some with real industry experience, genuinely questioned whether independently sourced or 3D printed structural parts on a car capable of going over 200 miles an hour was actually a responsible thing to be doing, cameras rolling or not. That's a fair point, and it came up constantly in the comments and in other creators' reaction videos. On the flip side, you had this huge wave of people who saw it as exactly the kind of scrappy, against-the-odds story car YouTube was built on, persistence going head-to-head with massive corporations' official stance, and actually winning. Both of those reactions existed loudly, at the same time, for basically the entire 2 years this played out. And honestly, I think that tension is a big part of why these videos kept pulling the numbers they did. So where does it all sit now? The car's finished. It runs. It's been driven. It's been shown off properly. Alex still owns it. And the industry got a pretty public reminder that when you tell a determined creator no, sometimes that's exactly what pushes them to prove you wrong in front of an audience bigger than most car magazines could ever dream of reaching. Anyway, that's the story, pretty much start to finish. If you made it this far, genuinely, respect, because that was a lot. If you got something out of this, hit like, it actually helps the channel a ton. And I'm curious where you land on this. Should Bugatti have stepped in and helped, or did they have a real point about not being able to guarantee a car once it's rebuilt outside their control? And should Alex have sold that car to Matt after everything he put into it? I've seen people going hard both ways in the comments already, so let me know where you stand. Subscribe if you want the next update on this build, because from what I've seen, this story isn't fully done yet. Alright, that's it for this one. See you in the next video.